Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to Ren's Room. Hope you're doing well. So this is officially the new name of the channel. People seem to have taken to it rather well, so I'm happy about that. Now, as a celebration for this new name and for the fact that the last couple of videos have been really interesting in terms of the debates that they sparked, trying to think about INFJs from a positive perspective, like Huey was saying in his comments. To celebrate this, I'm going to make a video on a somewhat related topic. I guess, it's about, I want to talk about maybe sadness and depression. So it sounds like I'm entering into the opposite territory. But if you think about it, this is very much the same topic. It's also about how to tackle those moments when we're not feeling at our best, when we feel like we're mired in things, we have no energy, we're depressed, whether it's clinical depression or something a bit more temporary. These things can happen, and I think if there's something I learned from navigating the online INFJ communities, is that there seem to be a lot of INFJs who find it hard to be INFJs or to be the way they are. In the interview that I was doing with Huey, some people in the comments in the chat room to that interview were saying, I would not wish that upon anyone else. And I was really taken aback by this statement. I found it quite striking, because I would not have imagined it to be so hard for some people to be of the INFJ type, let's say. I'm always careful not to reduce a personality to a type, but to have characteristics that would classify them as INFJs with all the supposed great, enviable qualities that people who are not INFJ think that we are basking in or bathing in, but rather than that, seeing the other side of the coin, which is more negative, about being so perpetually torn between reason and emotion, between wanting to be with people and wanting to be on our own, between wanting to fit and finding it very difficult to fit. And I would say probably also this, more than most types, I would say this constant preoccupation with meaning, with giving meaning to life. At least that's what happens with me. Like when I'm going through a period of say sadness or depression, often I find that after a long self-scrutiny, it relates to a lack of meaning somewhere. And often I don't realize that straight away. It takes a lot of time for me to realize it, because I try to cover it up almost instinctively by convincing myself that the situation that I'm in is a good one, and trying to make the most of it, while sometimes it's not working really well. It's interesting because in many ways, in my family, as you probably know, if you've seen some of my videos, some of you at least know, the core family, parents and siblings, 2 siblings, my brother is here today. We'll see if I can convince him to finally do a new interview, together. There's two FI DOMs and 2 FE DOMs. You realize that? No, sorry. Did I just Freudian slip an admission that I wish I were an FE DOM? No, 2 FI DOMs, 1 FE DOM, 1 NI DOM FE auxiliary. So let's say 2 prominent FI users and 2 prominent-ish, at least for me, FE users. It's very interesting to compare each of our relationship with these moments of darkness, these moments of sadness, of depression. because I feel like, in our family there's a bit of a history there. There's a bit of a proclivity towards feeling that way. I don't know if there is a correlation between being a feeler and being more likely to be depressed, or to be more easily or more commonly depressed. Or I think there's a correlation with introversion. But even in that family, the only big extrovert has had to deal with this less than the other three, I would say, and I count myself in these three. And it's very interesting because the FI-DOMs, they seem to become aware quicker that there's something that's not quite good, and to make decisions, or at least to be aware that they need to make decisions to fix state of affairs. Because I really believe that from a very pragmatic point of view, a lot of the time when you go through a phase of darkness, of sadness and depression, you can really, there are ways to get out of that. There are ways, pragmatically speaking, and it's interesting because I find that the FI-DOMs in my family, they are more quickly in keeping with this emotional intelligence and this ability to listen to their emotions quicker. They're able to sense it quicker, and to take some dispositions, to make the necessary adjustments to an extent towards fixing the situation than the FE users. I'm only going to talk about myself here, but I'm notoriously bad at listening to my body. I'm notoriously bad at really listening to my mind and my heart sometimes. When I was at the doctor like last year at some point, and I was talking to him about anxiety, and he was, at some point we were talking, and I said, I'm not depressed, I have anxiety, that's all. And he said, at some point, he was very tactful. I like this doctor, and he said, but I think there is some sadness in what you're describing. And he asked me some questions, and we eventually got to that place, and I had to admit it, and I was like, yeah, it's true. And it was quite interesting, because I think someone like my brother, if he goes through phases like these, he'd know that much more clearly, much quicker. That being said, once I identify the issue, I find, and I think it would be the same for my dad. Like once we identify the issue, it seems that we are also a little bit more, I don't know if the word is pragmatic, but it seems that we have a way of tackling the issue in a more external way, which might also be connected with FE versus FI. And I guess at this point, this might provide a good opportunity for me to share some of these tips with you, because these are very personal, and I don't think they necessarily work with everyone. But for me, like, there are definitely like big things that I need to act upon when like I'm going through a phase like this. So usually these are the things. So the lack of meaning for me is probably the main thing. I need to have something meaningful in my life. I used to think that having a job that was not particularly meaningful, but an activity on the side that was meaningful would be enough. In the end, I left my job. I was kind of forced to leave my job, but I was not unhappy about it. I had predicted it. In many ways, it suited me. But I think that I'll have to find a way to make more space for meaning, even than there's been so far. So that's the writing. And I would say a lot of the time when depression is related to this lack of aim, this lack of goal, this lack of meaning, well, maybe the first thing is to keep in mind that goals and meaning are connected. So having a goal is not necessarily about having like this material goal of like becoming the head of the department or whatever place, or earning that much money. It could be just any goal. For example, my goal at the moment, like as far as I'm concerned, is to have a manuscript of my philosophical work to be ready within the next year or two, which will contain like the essence of my system, which is ironic because it's the concept of essence is actually pretty absent from my system, but that's a goal. It's not necessarily a very materialistic goal, but it's the goal. It means something to me. So you see that there's a link between meaning and having a goal, because if you have a goal, you can imagine that like that's where you are and you've got a goal in the distance. To attain this goal, you have to project yourself towards it. So you create a movement in your life instead of being still. So the depression like sort of saps the energy from you. If you can recreate the movement towards the goal, well, that's like half of the job done. And the trajectory in itself, the going towards the goal, is the meaning, really. The meaning is connected with that. The goal could also be, you know, like to start a family or something like that. And that's another thing I find, that I can really compare that now, like where I am now, and something that I forget when I'm single. But because when I'm single, I'm always thinking, well, sure, I'm single, but at least I have a lot of time to dedicate to my passions, my thinking, my writing, all these things. Sometimes in the past, I find myself saying to myself, maybe I'll stay alone like for the rest of my life, and that's okay because I want to dedicate myself to thought, to my intellectual addictions, as a person once said, that I find very, very fitting, because I have intellectual addictions myself. But God, like ever since I've been in a relationship with this wonderful person, like I just find I find myself just a lot more at peace, and I think that's probably, I don't think it's necessarily something that's limited to INFJs, or mostly even about INFJs. Like you could say maybe meaning is something that INFJs and INFPs are likely to struggle with, but relationships I think are probably across the board important. But like for an INFJ, let's say, if that the INFJ is often in a situation where they struggle to find people who are like good listeners to their problems or issues, that's amazingly important. Imagine that you find a partner who is kind of like that, like my partner. That's huge, and that's something that is like to call it a plus in my life is to really understate it. It's like an immense force, you know, and I feel much more stronger with that force, and I hope that I provide the same force to my partner. So I would say that that's something to really keep in mind, you know, to not necessarily fall into the trap of thinking, oh, I can totally be alone. I don't really need another person. I can dedicate myself to X, Y, Z. I would recommend against it, honestly. So the romantic side of things, the meaning side of things. To return to the meaning side of things, to create a goal, I think what you need to think about is, what do you feel passionate about? If you're an INFJ, you're likely to be passionate about certain things. And what would you like to do? What would you like to achieve? What could you achieve? And what kind of time frame do you see yourself achieving it in? And just set it for yourself and try to work at it, like, if possible, a little bit every day. And I think it's better to work at it a little bit every day than a lot every 2 days or every week. Okay, I think so. But I think people will, I mean, people are different. They will have their different approaches. That's how it works for me. So I have this goal. Instead of working on it like 10 hours a day at the weekends, I work on it, you know, 2 hours a day, let's say. It's already a lot. I know it's a lot, but it could also be an hour a day. And once you've done it for like 2-3 weeks, it becomes part of your routine, and you're just used to it. In fact, you start feeling bad not doing it. So keep in mind that like the sense of routine like clicks into gear after about 2-3 weeks of applying anything whatsoever. So you do this, and it just will become part of your routine. And this hour a day that you dedicate to your goal, you could just keep applying like for years if your goal is a long-term one. And the thing is, that's going to instill your existence with the meaning that you're perhaps looking for or starting for. The meaning is, I guess what I want to say is, the meaning is not going to fall from like a tree. It doesn't grow on trees. I'm with Camus on this one. I think that, existential writer Camus, I think meaning is something that in a way we have to create for ourselves, but think that it is amazing as a gift for human beings to be able to create their own meaning. And I've talked about meaning before. It's a massive weight on our shoulders as well. It can be the source of great anguish because it's a lot of responsibility. But if you divided up this sense of responsibility into little chunks every day, it's incredible what you can achieve in like even just months. And there's nothing better than the realization after a few months that actually the little bit that you're doing every day is contributing to a vast body of work. And the thing is, whatever that body of work be, it doesn't have to be something in writing, it could be something else. But like when you see like the addition of all these different parts, and you start noticing that it grows, then you develop a sense of identification with what you've done, and it starts to have a life of its own, and you nurture that. It's almost like you're taking care of a child in a way. Of course, having children is something else entirely, but there's that element as well, and that also will give you additional meaning. You're not just creating meaning, you're taking care of the body of meaning that now has a body which you created, you contributed to by giving it time a little bit every day. So that's kind of something that I would really recommend. And then I would say lastly, I mean, of course, there are plenty of other things, like things that I feel a bit like a bit of a hypocrite for chanting about, because that's not necessarily what I do the most. But obviously, doing exercise every day or almost every day is known to be really, really good. Waking up relatively early, especially waking up around the same time every day, makes a big difference because it keeps you balanced. Eating more in the morning at lunch than for dinner, these things can have a big impact. But I would say that the other thing that's important is, for an INFJ especially, surround yourself with people who care about you, and if possible with people who understand you. I guess there's a difference, and you notice that. Let's be honest with ourselves. There are people who are very nice, but they don't understand us. And there are people who are not nice, and they kind of understand us a bit better. But if they're not nice, I don't think we should hang out with them too much. But there are also people who are kind of rare, but they exist, that understand us enough to be good listeners. And with those people, we will feel comfortable to open up a little bit. Because I think an INFJ can read things so quickly with other people that if they see that the person is going to be a little bit tone deaf to what they would like to express, and they kind of need to express in order to get it out there, the feeling of sadness, for instance, and sort of like scrutinize it with a person. If they feel intuitively that the person is going to be tone deaf to it, they're not even going to try. But keep in mind, there are people who are capable of having an appreciation for that. Honestly, in my life, it's often, when it's not been INFJs, in my own life, it's been usually INFPs and ENFPs. I find that they are very, very good at understanding us, to the extent that it's possible to understand the contours and the contents within the perimeter of a unique individuality like that of an INFJ. Because if you have those people that you can trust, you can share something, and you will not get the additional anguish of realizing that the people are just giving you advice that sounds really lame, even though they mean well, or tell you platitudes or just completely misunderstand. Because I don't think that's good. I don't think it's necessarily good to just talk to just about anyone. But I think it's still important to have friends that you can talk to. Friends who will listen and who will be able to, they don't necessarily need to give you like a wealth of insights, but even just to give you the feeling that they've understood you, and that whatever insight they give confirms that, gives you a certain space for expressing yourself. Do not bottle it up. Do not fall into NITI loops. Talk to these people, even if it's not a lot of people. Try to have people like these in your life. It's very important. It's very important. Plus the relationship, plus the giving meaning with a goal, dedicating it a bit of time every day or every 2 days, preferably every day, to it. Waking up early, getting into your routine of dedicating yourself to this work early in the day, So in the afternoon, you'll have most of your meaning already invested. Okay, guys? So that was my advice, and that's kind of what I do to kind of keep sane myself. I also, I would say that what I try to do is, because I get easily stressed by like all the admin stuff, I do it, I'm very structured, and I do everything very early. As soon as I know I have a deadline, I don't wait for the deadline, I take care of everything straight away, because when things start to pile up, when we procrastinate, that can be a massive stressor. So it's a matter of getting used to taking care of the admin stuff and doing things early. So putting everything into a schedule, adding it on your phone so you know when to do what, having that sorted. You don't need to stress out about that. And the other things as well, okay? Pragmatic things, spiritual things, romantic things. It's a delicate balance, but I think it can really help. Okay, guys? Well, let me know what you think in the comments. See you soon and have a lovely day.